I was in line at the flower shop, placing the final payment on her bouquet package, when my phone buzzed. A text from my daughter-in-law. "We're keeping the guest list small. You're not invited." I thought it was a mistake. Until, 30 seconds later, my son followed up with, "They just want peace, Dad. Don't take it personally." Peace. Funny word. Especially after I'd spent $9,200 for their anniversary. The tent, the flowers, the full catering. I'd wired the deposit a week earlier, when she'd said, "We want something elegant but simple." And I had nodded like I always do, because I thought giving was how I stayed close. But now, I wasn't even good enough for the guest list. No explanation. No call. Just a digital slap wrapped in peace. My name is Walter Grant. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever stood at the center of something you built, only to realize you've been quietly erased? I walked out of that flower shop slower than I walked in. Not angry, just hollow. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the scent of lilies beside me, and stared at nothing for 10 whole minutes. And in that silence, something inside me settled. Not revenge, not rage, just clarity. They wanted peace? Fine. Then peace they shall have. The kind that echoes in empty chairs and unpaid invoices. I started by opening the vendor folder on my dashboard. Click, click, click. Tent? Cancelled. Catering? Frozen. Venue deposit? Flagged and reversed. All under my name. My account. My money. No warning. Just silence, the kind they sent me. And 2 days later, when the morning sun rose on their big day, my son called. Once. Then again. 15 times in total. I let it ring. Until I didn't. I finally answered, and said the only sentence they truly earned. "Now you can truly celebrate, alone." He didn't speak at first. Just the rustling of breath, like he'd been running. Then, "Dad, what did you do?" I looked out my kitchen window, the coffee pot still bubbling beside me, and said calmly, "What you asked me to do. I gave you peace." Silence. I could almost hear his eyes blinking on the other end. "You canceled everything? The tent? The catering? The venue?" "Yes." He sputtered. You didn't even tell us." "You didn't tell me either." That hit him. The same way her text had hit me. No conversation. Just quiet dismissal. That's the kind of family we'd become. My son had been different once. The kind of boy who used to hold my hand when crossing the street. Now he couldn't even hold a seat for me at his wife's party. They wanted me invisible. So I became exactly that. And it worked. Later that day, I got word from a tent company that they arrived at the venue and no one was there to accept delivery. The caterers stood waiting in a locked lot. The venue manager said the account was flagged for irregular payment activity. Refunds? Already processed. At 3:15 p.m., I received one more message. From my daughter-in-law. "Why would you sabotage our anniversary?" I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because you don't reply to people who already decided you're disposable. You just disappear. But I wasn't gone. No, not yet. I watched their anniversary unfold from afar. A few Instagram stories from distant cousins. Plastic chairs. Dollar store streamers. No tent. No guests beyond 10. And my son? He didn't post a thing. Sometimes silence online says more than words ever could. And in that silence, I began remembering everything I'd paid for, everything I'd done, every single holiday I hosted so they wouldn't feel pressure, every gift I wrapped and signed in their names. All for what? To be removed with a single sentence. I keep a journal, not the kind with poetry or prayers. Mine is practical, a worn leather ledger with receipts tucked into its folds. Every check I wrote, every bill I covered, every time I paid and said nothing. It started after Margaret died. I didn't want to forget how I showed up for people. Because when you're old and quiet, they rewrite the story. They say you never helped, that you were distant, that you didn't try hard enough. But my ledger never lies. It holds the down payment I made for their first apartment, $8,000. The private school tuition for their oldest, $12,500. The emergency roof repair after that storm, $3,400. The cruise they couldn't afford but posted anyway, I covered that too. Over $70,000 spent across 12 years. And not once did I ask for credit. But now I flipped to the back of the ledger and started a new page. Title: What I Took Back. Because taking back peace was just the beginning. I called the accountant I referred them to last tax season. Asked a simple question. Did they ever switch the joint business account out of my name? He paused, then laughed awkwardly. No, sir. You're still listed as guarantor. Perfect. I called the office. Froze my co-signature. No notice. No apology. Just business. By nightfall, I received a voicemail from my son. We can't pay the decorator. Our check bounced. Why would you do this? I didn't return the call. Some lessons aren't taught with words. They're taught with absence. And while they scrambled for folding chairs and backup bakeries, I made tea, pulled out my journal, and kept writing. Not to remind them of my worth, but to remind myself. Because when people treat you like a ghost long enough, one day you stop haunting and start walking through walls. 3 days after the party, my mailbox held a cream-colored envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten like it mattered. Inside was a thank you card. Despite the hiccups, it turned out lovely. Thank you again for the earlier support. Love, Emily and James. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a soft, sugary pat on the back, as if I were some ATM that hiccuped. I set the card down next to the kettle. Didn't rip it. Didn't frame it either. Just stared at it, long enough to realize something dangerous. They weren't sorry. They were adjusting. Making room in their lives for me as a quiet, invisible utility, not a father. Not a man. Just support. That's when I made the next decision. One final gift. Or rather, the absence of one. Emily's birthday was 2 weeks away. For the last 7 years, I'd sent her a $1,000 check and a handwritten note, always signed. To my daughter by love, not by blood. This year, I sent nothing. No card. No text. No call. Just a clean space where entitlement used to live. 2 days later, a message arrived from James. Hey, just wondering if maybe something got lost in the mail? Emily didn't get anything and felt kinda hurt. Hurt? That word echoed in my head like a dropped fork in an empty hall. I thought of every time I sat in the back row, clapping. Every time I bought gifts on their behalf. Every time I swallowed disappointment just to keep peace. And now they had the audacity to say she felt hurt? I didn't respond. Instead, I lit a candle, placed that thank you card underneath, and watched the flame consume every loop of her cursive handwriting. No rage. Just release. Because when you stop feeding people with love, you find out who was actually hungry and who just showed up for the meal. I didn't go to Thanksgiving that year. First time in 23 years. Didn't announce it. Didn't fake the flu. Didn't make a scene. I just stayed home. Roasted a small chicken. Lit one candle. Ate in silence. You'd be amazed how peaceful a table feels when no one expects anything from you. Around 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A photo for my niece. The long dining table. Half the seats empty. They'd moved it to James and Emily's house that year. More space, they said. But the crowd had thinned. A few relatives couldn't make it. Some didn't want to. I wasn't the only one quietly slipping away. Later that night, I got another text from my sister-in-law, Karen. You okay, Walt? People noticed you weren't there. People noticed. Funny. When I paid for the past 3 Thanksgivings, no one noticed. When I sat near the kitchen so they could give the bigger seat to someone younger, no one noticed. When I cleared dishes while others laughed in the living room, no one noticed. But when I removed myself, suddenly, they all remembered my name. That's the thing about silence. When it's voluntary, it roars. James called the next morning. Straight to voicemail. Left a message saying, "It just didn't feel right without you." He wasn't wrong. But the weight of that discomfort, that was his to carry now. I took a walk that afternoon, past the bakery where I used to order the pies. The woman at the counter said, "Didn't see you this year. You always pick up the pumpkin and apple, right?" I smiled. "Not anymore." She nodded slowly, as if she understood something unspoken. I paid for a small tart. One slice. Just for me. Because sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop giving to people who only know how to take. Christmas came. No knock at the door. No card. No invitation. Which was fine. I'd already taken my name off the shared Amazon Prime account, stopped the monthly grocery auto delivery for their household, and canceled the annual family photo session I used to fund, the one they never invited me to be in. On Christmas Eve, I sat by the fire with a second-hand novel, cocoa in hand. That's when I heard the soft thump at the door. I opened it to find a red envelope. No stamp. Just slid through the mail slot. Inside, a card from Emily and James. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're well. Let's reconnect in the new year." No, sorry. No mention of what had happened. Just hope, wrapped in vague pleasantries. I closed the card. Didn't tear it. Didn't text back. Instead, I slid it into the drawer with their thank you card from the anniversary. Let memories pile up like unpaid debts. 3 days later, my brother called. "Haven't seen you in months, Walt. You okay?" "I'm peaceful," I said and meant it. "But you missed Christmas." "I didn't miss it. I just didn't go where I wasn't welcomed." He paused. Then, quieter. Few of them are starting to realize they may have overstepped. May have. I smiled into the receiver. Not bitter, just honest. I gave them a feast. They invited me to crumbs. He sighed. "People talk, Walt. They're saying you've changed." "I haven't," I replied. "I've just stopped negotiating my worth." That night, I took out the red envelope again, looked at it under the lamplight, then tucked it into the fireplace. Let it burn. Because sometimes the most sacred traditions are the ones you break to save yourself. And peace? Peace isn't a place they send you when you're inconvenient. It's a place you choose when you're finally done begging to be seen. January brought snow and something else. A certified letter. Return address, James. I sat at the dining table and opened it slowly, hand steady, heart quiet. Inside, a formal apology, typed, signed, structured like a business memo. We acknowledge the oversight, the hurt caused, and the dependence we placed on your generosity. It was never our intent to exclude you. Intent. That soft little word people use when they don't want to face the weight of consequence. We hope to repair things. We're seeking therapy. Emily has reflected on the distance we created. We'd be honored if you would consider joining us for dinner soon. I folded the letter once, then twice, set it next to the firewood. Didn't burn it. Not yet. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was a mirror. And for once, they were the ones staring into it. I left it on the table, visible. A reminder to myself. Silence is not abandonment. Absence is not anger. Sometimes it's the only way people finally hear you. 3 days later, James showed up at my door. No notice. Just there, holding a pie. Apple. The kind I used to bring every Thanksgiving. He looked older. Not in age, but in awareness. "Dad," he said, voice careful. I didn't come to defend anything. Just to say, I see it now. I opened the door wider. Let him stand inside. Not as a son to forgive, but as a man who had finally come without asking for anything. He looked around my quiet home. "You stopped calling." I nodded. "I stopped being someone you called." He lowered his eyes. "I miss you." I didn't answer. Because some things you don't fix with confessions. You fix them with consistency. And consistency, I told him, takes time. Spring came quietly. No grand reunion. No tearful embraces. No dramatic monologues. Just small things. A card on my birthday, handwritten this time. A photo of their son drawing a picture titled, "Grandpa's House." A voicemail from James saying, "We made too much soup. Want some?" They were learning, not how to be perfect, but how to show up without entitlement. That, to me, was enough. I never responded with fanfare. No sweeping speeches. Just space. And the occasional sure or thanks. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about recalibration. One night in May, I hosted dinner. Not for them. For me. I set a table for one. Real china. Cloth napkin. Candles. A roast chicken I seasoned myself. Put on the old jazz I used to play when Margaret was still alive. And I raised a glass, not in bitterness, but in clarity. I remembered every sacrifice. Every quiet hurt. Every "we'll call you later" that never came. And I smiled. Not because I got even, but because I got free. James texted that evening. "We saw your porch lights on. Thought of stopping by, but didn't want to intrude." I replied simply, "Next time bring soup." Not because I needed it, but because now if they came, it wouldn't be as takers. It would be as people who learned the cost of taking too much. And as I cleared my own plate and wiped my own table, I realized something most men learn too late. The table you set for others means nothing if you're not allowed to sit at it yourself. That night, I slept with the windows open. No bitterness. No ache. Just the sound of wind in the trees and a calendar full of blank, peaceful days ahead.